Welcome to the Once and Future Author Podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I am so excited to be joined by author Michael Ross today. We have so much to chat about, but just as a little means of introduction, Michael Ross is the author of this fabulous book series of Elfistra the Sorceress, but he's also here to tell us a little bit about other books he's working on with school children around the world having to do with fairies. So from fantasy to fairies, please welcome Michael Ross. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, it's a great pleasure to talk to you again, Stephanie.
Oh,
Lovely to
always a
see you.
pleasure. And I had to say, we were chatting before this started. I said, let me quick hit record, or you and I will be sitting here all day talking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Always such a pleasure. And one of these days, either or your house or my house, we'll cross that pond in the middle so
Yeah.
that we can meet in person. But first, just for our listeners, where are you right now? I hear that beautiful accent. So where exactly are you?
Well, I'm in England. I'm in the northwest of England. I'm in the green belt, they call it, in an area called the High Peak. It's called the High Peak because you have lots of very tall, rolling hills. I've got a little oldie worldy cottage. It's got a thatched roof, as some of the old English ones have, and I overlook the a sweeping valley that goes down. It's called the Strimes Valley, and at times I feel like I'm up in the air looking down. I've always liked to be up in the. I don't know what it is. Rather than be down in a dip, I want to be above it all, and it is the most beautiful place. The air's very fresh. For me, as an author, this idea of lockdown, and of course, we're still in lockdown more or less till the 12th of April. Things will start to open up, but I only have to turn right out of my cottage door, and it's all pure countryside.
Oh,
You won't see many humans. You'll see badgers, you'll see foxes, you'll see all sorts of insects and so on. So the air and the ambience is really nice.
oh my gosh, it sounds so
Have
lovely.
I painted a nice, pretty picture for you?
You did a thatched
There you are.
cottage in England. I mean, it sounds like someplace an author should be living. Now, the only thing I know in the northwest of England, isn't that where Liverpool, Manchester are not near there?
Oh yeah, I mean Manchester. If I drive or get on a train, I'm probably half an hour from Manchester.
Oh, okay. So it's that
So,
half an hour
yeah,
away.
Liverpool maybe an hour and a quarter's drive away. So
Okay.
we're really pretty close.
Okay.
Strange thing about Liverpool is that even though we're only an hour away, their accent is so different to the ones that we have where I live. Uh, it's funny, really. I think it's just maybe their influence of the Irish that sort of emigrated over in the old days. So we have that sort of very Scouse language, it's called. And if I come across an authentic Scouser, even I have to look in a translating book to try to find out what he's talking about. So, but they have the most wonderful sense of humor. No matter what they talk about, you'll end up laughing. They're just natural comedians, all of them.
Really interesting.
So yeah, we're all, remember, I mean, it's a pretty small country, so it won't take us long. If I say I'm going from John O'Groats up to Land's End, it's not going to take me that long to get there. So it's,
Well, my son is a huge Manchester United fan. So
oh,
really happy
right,
to hear I had on an author who was just a half
right.
hour away.
Well, you know what? I mean, I used, well, in fact, in Manchester, you can support, there's two teams, there's
There's
Manchester
Man
City
City,
or
right?
Manchester United. And I had a grandfather who worked in a hat factory, and he used to make bowler hats. And as a very, very small boy, he made me a little mini bowler hat that was red and white stripes. And that was I wouldn't go to sleep unless I had my bowler hat with me. That's all. The colours of Manchester United. Yeah, a very famous club.
Nice. Good to know. Well, now I
Yeah,
cannot wait until we're allowed to get on a plane and I'll come over and check
yeah,
out this thatched
absolutely.
roof cottage up on a hill in England. What is not to like? Let's
Well,
start with your
it's fun.
own books before we get you
Yeah.
all over the world. And talk to me a little bit about Elfistra the Sorceress and how she came about.
Well, before this one, I'd actually already written a comedy, and then I wrote True Life Story, which actually has been a huge success. That's done really well.
Okay.
And then I wanted to write a classic. Look, I used to enjoy Tolkien, but I found it hard to read. I mean, I felt I could only read about 4 or 5 chapters. Then I wanted to go into a room and have a good cry. It was this like, it was very dark in those sorts of books. And the way that he went on about and his characterizations, I mean, 3 pages is enough for anybody to sort of survive. So I decided to write a classic epic fantasy. I've got a little book that starts it all off called the prequel. It gives you an idea of what's happening, and then there's 3 major books in the trilogy, and it's basically about how the elves meet humans. And
Mm.
in fact, they come into play because we are making so much of a mess of our own planet that the elves in a different dimension had seen this and they thought, it's going to rack and ruin unless we step in and help. So in they came. Remember, in my books, the elves are 3.5 million years ahead of us in evolution. So they've got some magic there and they're very wise. And it takes a lot for us humans who think we know everything to accept it. So I build up all these characters with their elvish and basically human characters. And then the adventures that happen. And as we start to go through the books, and then there's an elf and a human that fall in love, and then they have a hybrid child. In fact, the hybrid child is called Kia. Now, for all you mums out there that have got teenage daughters, and I'm sure all of you will say that their daughters, they never have any problems with their hormones and everything else. So the sweetest children in the whole wide world. Well, can you imagine half elf, half human child who is having an argument with her father? She just snaps her fingers and then she lifts him off the ground and he's
Oh,
floundering 10 feet in the air, and she just sort of decides to scoot off somewhere else. It's more difficult to deal with, teenagers like that. So we explore all these sorts of characters, but my underlying thing completely with all the Wand Chronicles is to make every character as believable as possible. So you could imagine it could be true. He is real, this person. Now, it's okay with humans. We've got all our sort of foibles and we can sort of construct our characters. What do you do with an elf? Do elves have different personalities? So, from my background as an actor, I started working on character building for all my elves. And it's got to the point where now I've finished that series, that some of them are really believable to me. And in fact, I've brought them into other books that I'm writing now.
fantastic. So elves, humans, and we're on the lower end of that spectrum intellectually, I see. And then you sort of spun it into fairies. Tell me.
Yeah, well, I introduced fairies. I've got a sense of humor. And I think a sense of humor you can have even in real life when times are pretty bad for you. Humor can sometimes help bring you out of that little deep hole. And so I always have little bits of humor that come into it. So I introduced a fairy into this, and she is a rather special fairy. She's called Tinker Tanker. Now, this fairy, she's a little overweight, but hey, she's got a heart of gold and she's the bravest fairy you could ever imagine. She just likes to eat too much nectar. I mean, we all have our little weaknesses. And in fact, she's really good. She's listened to some advice from all of us and she's slimming down really well now. She used to be called Tinker Super Tanker, but now it's just Tinker Tanker. Uh, but I have little characters in there. We bring in the humor into these little fairy stories that we write, and it all seems to work and again seem believable. So I started on this series called The Big Fairy Adventures, and And I thought, this was just at the start of lockdown last year. And I thought, what can I do for the children? You know, they need to be. I would like a child in many years ahead when somebody asks them, what was 2020 like for you with COVID? And they say, well, actually, we had a great time. We had a great summer. There was a massive fairy garden. We painted pebbles. We all got together. So I started to build a little fairy garden. Literally, it was 4 or 5 little pebbles and a little mirror and a little sign saying, make a magic wish. That was it. But then it grew and grew. And then people were coming, people I didn't know, because you know, you live in a small community, you know, when a stranger comes in somewhere. And there were people coming from great distances to have a look at it all. So, and there it is, right in the middle. That's that how it started off with that, just that little circle right at the in the foreground there.
Right.
And then we had a magic tap, which it wasn't on here. We had other features that came later, and we've even got some clouds with fairies languishing on those clouds. You can see them on the wall there. So we even had
Wow.
some little fairy clouds. And the children just loved it. The parents would come along with the children. The children would stare at all the fairies. And then you could invariably hear the parents saying, well, come on now, we must go. We've got to have tea. Just 5 more minutes, please. And then they would stay a little bit longer and they'd point everything out. Like I say, this will be, oh my goodness, less than a third of how it's going to be now. Now I'm going to
Wow.
rebuild it. So it's going to be huge.
So the fairies, the children started coming. You thought maybe I'll just get a few children, and next thing you know, they were coming from all over.
All over, all nationalities, all religions. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, you know, we've got all sorts coming. It appeals to a children's imagination. And this is the sad thing, is that as we grow up, we tend not to believe in fairies or the fairy stories. But the good news to all you guys who are not children is that one day you'll be old enough to start reading fairy stories again, and that is really important. And so as I was building, I thought, I tell you what, I'll just write a small book called My Fairy Garden, tell a little history about how it happened, come up with some little one-page fairy original stories, and I'll invite a local school to draw a fairy, name it, and then send it to me if they want. I honestly thought I'd get 10 or 15 fairies. Honestly, that's it, tops. I had to stop it at 72 fairies that
God.
were flying in from 2.5 hours away.
Oh my gosh, how did they all hear about this?
Um, you know something? The power of the mum, the
Yes.
power of mothers on Facebook that all spread the word. And then suddenly I've got all these fairies, which are then in the book. I've got
Ah,
72 fairies. And then, so we have a fairy on the left hand side,
yeah.
exactly. And then if you scroll down, if you got then on the right hand side of the open page, you will have a little story
Oh,
that
okay.
goes.
I don't have
So
the stories.
all the way through. Now, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's development to children, but I mean, we're looking at children as young. We've got a 3.5-year-old that's driven one, drawn a fairy,
Right.
right up to 10-year-olds.
Oh my
But
gosh.
the younger children, none of the fairies have noses, but they have big smiles. I'm not sure what that means yet. I'm going to ask one of the queen fairies what the heck that means, but I'm sure she'll give me an answer.
Yeah,
So,
at some point they put in a nose. Is that it?
yeah. Yeah,
So here's the
there's some
fairy,
station, but
and
there's one there. That's
here's the
one you see.
story,
Yeah,
right? The little
yeah.
story.
So I've got these little stories in there that a little original stories. I've got one or two sayings of famous people that
Hmm.
you wouldn't believe believed in fairies, like Albert Einstein, and W.B. Yeats, a famous poet, who all believed in fairies. So it's great, really, to bring those in for children. So you know, it's a funny thing for anybody who's listening who is a marketeer. You can spend a lot of money trying to get the word out there that they must come and they must buy your things and so on. I've done nothing. It is purely word of mouth that people have wanted to come along and they want a book. Now they don't want one book, they want four books. And so I'm having
What you're
to,
saying is pure gold for so many people who are
well,
looking for how to get
who
basics done.
who would have thought? And if you imagine, so many years ahead, that little child will have grown up, they'll see the book, and then they'll be able to look in there and they'll see the fairy that they drew when they were 6 or 7 or 8. And it's a nice keepsake, isn't it, really?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course,
Absolutely.
there was a problem though, Stephanie, because I wanted it to be full color. I thought the fairies and the children, it needs to be full color.
Right. Oh, yes.
So took a lot of searching to find a printer that would print the book in full color. Now, to give you an example, at the moment, if you wanted to buy that paper book on Amazon, it's going to cost you $19.
Oh,
Ingram Spark, $13. But I found a little British printer and you can buy it for £6, which, well, sorry, $6. So there's a
really?
huge difference there.
Oh,
So, so anyway, I decided I wasn't at first, I didn't want to have an ebook. I wanted children to have the book so they
right.
could feel it and come to terms with it. But I've relented and I've done an ebook. So it makes it easier for people in other countries to download it and look at the book and read the
Right.
stories.
No, I'm with you. There's nothing like holding a book in your hand.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
But there is something to be said for the speed and the convenience of an ebook. I would never
Yeah.
want one instead of a print book, but I always choose to publish in both so that I don't want anyone to miss an opportunity.
Oh, absolutely agree. There is definitely a place for an ebook, but there's a lovely little cartoon that I came across recently, and it shows quite an elderly librarian handing a book to a little boy, and she's saying to him, "No, you don't have to plug it in anywhere, and if you want to flip to another page, you just turn it like that. See, and you can take it anywhere." And he says, "Anywhere? Could I take it to the moon?" She said, "Yes." And it would still work on the moon. So it's quite a nice little cartoon, I think.
Ah, how the times they have changed.
Yeah,
So your fairies though did not just remain in northwest England. Tell me a
yeah.
little bit about where the fairies and your work have gone next.
Well, I'm always doing my best to get children to appreciate reading and books, because I think, in another 20 years' time, if we don't do that and books go out of fashion, where will our book readers be?
Exactly.
So I started contacting various schools. There's some in Croatia. And that one there we saw the photograph of was a private school in Dubai,
Mm.
in the United Arab Emirates. And I invited children in that book, excuse me, is to write and draw an image of an alien and name it, and I will put it in the book, which I did. Well, then the principal found out about this, and she said, "Please, will you send me some of those books?" And you see the smiles on their faces. They were
Yes.
delighted to have this thrill of knowing there's a book with something they've created inside it.
Mm-hmm.
But you
Absolutely.
see,
Look at
I
them.
didn't stop there. Knowing me, I always try to push it a bit more. So for those people who don't know, we authors will have beta readers, people who will check your a roughly sort of composed chapter and tell you how it's going. Is it beginning okay? Is the end okay? And so on. Now it's a children's book. Those are middle graders, and I thought, why not get children to be the beta readers? Heck, it's for them, isn't it? Let them have an input. And it's really worked well. So for that book, I had, I think, 5 beta readers, and they were all children, and they were really helpful. So it's very much a children's thing. Then I went to Croatia. Yes, well, Croatian children, I mean, they study English over there. And I've been having regular Zoom meetings with children of about 10, 11, and 12. Their English is better than mine. I mean, it's They are amazing. They really are. And again, we wrote a book, it's become a bestseller, which is a bilingual book
Oh,
about what it's like to go to school for the first time. I mean, well, I can't remember it. You're young enough to remember it, Stephanie. I
oh,
know
I
you are.
wish.
But listen, so it can be a frightening thing. So I wrote this book called What is a School? And it tells you all the great things about going to a school, meeting new friends, that you can have playtime, that you will learn lots of great things. And we did a bilingual version of that. And that went down really well and ended up on Croatian TV and so on.
Wow.
So we're still working, and I'm trying to expand out with children as far as I can, because they're like little sponges. They just love it, and they want to write books. They come to me and they say, "Can I write a book?" I said, "Yes, you can." Oh, well, how much will it cost? It'll cost nothing. We'll go through something called Amazon KDP, and I'll help you put it together, and we'll format it. And I've done that for a number of children, and that is a huge thing for a young child that doesn't know where they're going in life, and want to achieve something. It's a great feeling to know that they've got their ideas down. It's in a book, and they're holding it in their hands. It's a thrill.
Oh my gosh, what you are
Hey,
doing.
it's still a thrill for me. Each time another book of mine comes out, I still look at it and I hold it here, and I hold it to my heart, and I get a little bit teary, not a lot, but I just think, oh, this is so amazing, this book.
You know, Michael, if you see behind me, my
Yeah,
tagline is changing lives one book at a time.
yeah,
And you
it's
are
great.
absolutely doing that. You are
Yeah,
changing their lives. You're
yeah,
changing their lives
yeah.
today,
Mm,
but for the future. You
mm,
know, who knows where this will take them, whether it's in a literary manner or just in a self-confidence manner.
yeah,
And you're also
absolutely.
teaching them that anything is possible. You're teaching
Yeah.
them that if you will it, if you can do it, if you think it, it's yours.
Oh,
That's just,
well, absolutely. That's been my main drive. Is this idea that anything is possible.
yeah,
Anything is possible, and you can work at it, and it's not easy. Some of those paths that you take are a little difficult, and you'll make mistakes, which is all part of the learning process. And for me as an author, after 18 books, I suppose now, without realizing it, you get quite knowledgeable,
yes.
especially for other people like myself that are independent publishers. I publish my own.
Hmm.
Suddenly I'm being called on to offer advice on things. And I thought, surely not me, but you do pick up whatever you do, you pick up experience, don't you?
Absolutely, you do. And, especially in today's, I hate it's been more than a year. We can't even call it these crazy, unprecedented times. We've been living them for a year now. To
Mm,
give people that vision, to give children that vision that whatever they want to accomplish, they can accomplish. If
yeah.
they and that they, in essence, and you as a writer and now as an advocate for children and literacy and writing, that if you can dream it, whatever world you imagine, that's what you can make it.
Oh, absolutely. I've no qualms about that at all. I'm always telling the children, say, can we do this? Could we do that? I said, yes, of course you can.
Yes,
There's
yes.
nothing stopping you.
And I'm so
Nothing.
glad they have you, because the whole world
Well,
is telling them right now, no, you can't.
yeah.
Isn't the whole world
Oh,
telling
I
them right now,
know.
no, you can't, but not you?
Yeah. Well, you see, I've got this sort of thing. I'm terrible, really. If there was a red button with a big warning sign, "Do not press,"
You press it.
I'm always gonna, or a big sign on the beautifully mown grass saying, "Do not walk." I will put my foot on it. Don't say to me you can't do it. Um, yeah, I've always, don't matter what I don't even think about it. I just say, yes, come on then, let's have a work with it. Now, look, there's a little example just a few days ago. I went into a little hardware shop here to get something for the fairy garden. And the woman serving me had heard about the fairy garden and everything else. And she just happened to say, oh, my daughter's 10. And she's really good. She's written some little stories together, but they're all scattered everywhere and everything. I said, right, this is my card. You both come and we'll get together, we'll Zoom it, and we'll get a book and she'll put it all together. I mean, apparently, it's like I've told her she's won the lottery, this little girl. She can't believe it. And that is to children, isn't it? That's the lottery.
Adults
So,
and adults,
and
absolutely.
adults, and adults, yeah.
Empowering people to fulfill their goals and
Yeah.
dreams.
Yeah.
That's huge what you are doing.
Oh, well, I don't plan it. It's the way that my character and personality has always been,
Well, that's nice.
to try to help.
That is just
So I'm working together with another very well-known author who has a series called Bentley the Hippo series.
hmm
And we would love to see on all the school buses a big green K, which stands for the kindness bus. We're
mm,
trying to get kindness buses set up. Um, and Bentley the Hippo would be the emblem that would be seen on all these buses. And it'd be
nice.
wonderful if we could do that and generate
Oh
this
my
feeling of
gosh,
kindness.
what a
Yeah.
fabulous thing. Well, I would love to hear some thoughts from you about what our viewers can do, both on two fronts. So you're going to
Yeah.
have to bear with all my questions. One is
Yep.
a fiction writer, because besides all these wonderful things you're doing around the world, you are a fantastic fiction writer. And I definitely want to hear what you think our viewers who want to get started. If somebody wants to get started and they look at your books and say, I want my name on that. That's what I want in my life.
Mm.
What can they do today to get started down that path? People who are saying, I don't even know where to begin. I'm overwhelmed. What what
Yeah.
tips can you give?
Do you mean to actually which book to purchase and to read? You
I
mean?
think that's a great place to start, because by reading,
Yeah.
that will help you.
Well, of course, there are so many books out there, but I think the idea works really well, and I've done it too, is to let people have a taster. And
Mm,
so the first book of the Wand Chronicles is a shorter book, and it's called the prequel, and it just gives you a little idea of what is going to be happening in it properly. And people can actually go onto my website, download that for free.
oh,
It's free. Oh no, absolutely. The
here, let me make
prequel
sure
is
they can see
free.
that. Here's that website. Um,
There it is.
it's
The wand dot me.
wand.me. Okay.
Yeah,
And you can get the
me.
free prequel, the
You
wand.me.
can.
Wow.
And
Free.
I've done that with all the other books that are my series, because if you go on the website, you will then come across all the other books I've written. They all have links to Amazon. But anything that is a series, like the Big Fairy Adventures, will have a little free book to start with
Oh,
to give you a little taster. I think it's only fair that, because not everybody's going to like my books. I mean,
right.
and I can cope with that. But they may, if they just sort of, without having to spend one dime, you can give and have an idea of what it's all about, and then you can take the plunge and get into it.
Fantastic advice for our new writers out there. On twofold. On twofold. One is that if you are writing, a great way to entice your new readers is to offer a short free book to get their foot in the door. But I'm also going to toss out there that if you are interested in writing, the number one biggest thing you can do for yourself to improve your writing is to read more books. The
Yeah.
more you read, the more it's going to help you to write.
Well, I was a voracious reader when I was small. I went to a boarding school. My parents worked in Africa, you see, so I joined them for vacation. But I went to a boarding school, and we didn't have TV and things like this. It was quite strict, so I spent a lot of time reading, and I
Mm,
read everything from classics all the way through to science fiction and you name it. And that has been a great basis for me. Now, it sounds really strange for you here, but when I'm writing books, I don't read other people's books.
okay.
And the reason is I don't want any influence to come into my writing. I'd like it to be, it'll never be any author, I don't care who they are, their writing will never be 100% original. It can't be, because you will have experienced life, you will have seen things on TV and films and read other books, and there'll be a hint of something there that comes into your story. But I do my best. When I'm writing, I won't read. Then if I have a break, then I read, and
Okay.
and I do, and actually, I read by doing reviews for other authors, and
Oh,
I and
wow.
I find that fantastic because I'm reading books that I wouldn't normally. Um, I'm reviewing books I wouldn't normally read. Like just finished a book which is a thriller, and another very difficult. It's called Splintered Reality, about a lovely lady that got contracted COVID, but she didn't die from it. She's recovered, but it affected her mentally really badly. She didn't know who her husband was, thought he was a stranger, didn't know her children, and and through the traumas of that. And it's a compelling book. Now I wouldn't normally have read that, but because I'm reviewing it, I did. And you know what? I thoroughly, in the right way, sense I enjoyed that book.
Oh, Michael, you're giving me so many takeaways for our viewers. Um, and that last one was so important. I have found that the author community around the world is so incredibly supportive.
Yeah,
And what you're
yeah,
describing here with
yeah,
helping other authors with
yeah,
reviews
yeah,
um, helps yourself. As an author, you should be reading, and it would really be nice to read things not necessarily in your genre too.
yeah,
It
absolutely.
certainly helps your mind and it helps to expand you. So read and leave reviews
Yeah,
because the greatest gift you can give to an author to help their books get into more hands is
yes,
more reviews. That
of
absolutely
course.
helps. So
Yeah.
what a great takeaway that is. Um,
Well, and also part of a number of groups now there where I'm on as an advisor in my own small capacity, but and sometimes right at the beginning they will ask a question which you think, wow, don't they know how to do that? But of course, I was the same. To me, when I wrote my first book, it was like looking at the north face of the Eiger, and you think, oh heck, how do I start? So you start by putting your foot in a little foothold 6 inches off the ground. The moment you do that, you're a little nearer to the top.
ooh,
And then you bring things into you. And before you know it, you're getting quite adept at writing them.
mm,
So, it's a fun journey. And to think that they're there for a while, I have a slight problem in that I like to read my own books. It's about this thing about people who like to listen to their own jokes. It's a I don't know what. There's some psychological problem here. I'm sure there's a therapist who's maybe watching this thinking I could help this guy seriously. So,
I'll pass
but
along their number if they contact.
yeah, please, I'll need it. But yeah, because of the humor I have in there, I know which books I can pick up sometimes. If I just need a break and a relaxation, I'll pick it up, and actually I can chuckle at my own books. So yeah, it's just this idea of just trying to help, and
Yes.
it's something that's inherent in me. And if I can pass any little gem on,
Oh,
then
you
that
have.
makes my world a little happier.
So many gems for our readers out there, our writers out there, and for people who want to ignite that passion in other people. Um,
Yeah.
any thoughts? I mean, you are worldwide now. You and your books and your outreach to children is global. What about somebody who might want to just start a little bit? That's how you started with just one fairy book.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you how I started. I went to a big supermarket over here, which is called Tesco's. I guess it's like
Oh,
a
I know
Walmart.
Tesco's.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
We don't have it
uh,
here.
yeah. So I went in one day and I decided to have a coffee. And at the far end of the store, on the first floor, you can have a coffee. And got my little coffee and I sat down and I looked over at the shop floor, and there was a little incident. It was funny. It wasn't a horrible incident. Something was quite funny, and I thought I'll just write it down as, I don't know, a minute's little comedy sketch on my phone. And then the next week I went, something else happened. It's as if they were planning and waiting for me to come. And then I'd write some more stories, and then I'd put them on Facebook. This is what I did. And then people were saying, that was so great. Oh, have you got any more stories? So I carried on with that for a while.
Wow.
But Then I went to see a clairvoyant.
Ah.
And besides all this about you're this big white horse in this muddy field and your hoof is stuck and one day you will fly like eagle into the and all this stuff. But then she suddenly stopped and says, you have to write. I said, what do you mean write? She says, well, you need to write books. You have to write. It's all here. I said, I only just passed English at school, you know. I mean, there's lots of foreign people who speak English far better than me. How can I write a book? She said, I'm telling you, you must write. So that got me into thinking, how can I put these little stories in the book? I've got to find a publisher. It's going to cost me an arm and a leg. But no, here was Amazon KDP for no money at all. I was able to put them into the book. That first book, it needs to be edited properly. The formatting wasn't brilliant, but I did it. I made the book, and then I held it in my hands, and I was really thrilled.
Ugh.
And that's how it started for me.
Oh, I am so thrilled. And you make it sound so simple, which is just such a gift.
But it is really, it
Oh,
is
but
really.
I always say that we humans, maybe the elves don't, but we humans, our greatest enemy is usually ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's our mindset, and we think that we can't do things. And you are just such a huge proponent for yes, you can.
Well, you know what? I came across somebody last week, and she'd heard about the fairy garden and everything, and she said, "Oh, you're an author, aren't you?" She said, "Oh, you know, I don't know how do you go down that? How could you write a book? How do you?" Well, imagine I'm your friend. She said, "Right. Now, tell me a little story about something you've done that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you've got 5 minutes just to tell me about it. It's an adventure about anything, any subject." So she did, and I said, "Look, there's your book." We've all got books in our head.
Oh,
They're all waiting. Get your beginning, a middle, and an end. And I do that with my books. That's my little test. If I've come up with a brand new series, if I can tell somebody the whole of that series with a beginning, middle, and end in less than 10 minutes, there's my book.
mm, love that. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people who left our show already because they started writing, and I'm
I
thrilled.
hope so.
I hope so too. And if they left to start writing, that's fine. And if they left to head over to your website to grab both the free copy of the prequel as well as to find out more about all this wonderful work that you're doing all over the world, inspiring and igniting a passion for books in children.
Yeah.
I think that that's just amazing. Michael, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and
Uh,
for inspiring our audience. Thank you so much.
well, thank you very much. I humbly say thank you. And it's lovely, as always, to meet you again, Stephanie.
Absolutely.
You're so gorgeous. It is so
Oh,
nice to talk to you.
keep that teapot warm. I am coming, I promise.
All right. I'll
And thank you to
go.
our viewers. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank